Hey, Amy. I'm here with Amy on the phone, and I just wondered whether, as I've got her on the phone, I asked if she would give her thoughts to this video of Richard D. Hall when he's talking about, well, he's talking about subversion, which is another name for, well, the big C. What's your thoughts after you hearing that, Amy, when I played it to you?
Well, I agree with what he was saying. It seems that we are still under the big C. We're very controlled and manipulated by the system in just about every way. Recently I had an experience with the medical system where my father was ill and he received the worst treatment possible, and I just saw how the system just fails, and it just seems like the whole system is set up that they just don't care about the people. They just care about controlling our minds and having us go out to work to make money to support them. They want us to just be constantly consuming and just always never really be able to live a good free life and not even enjoy life, but just be busy worrying about working and making money and consuming and spending and obeying the government. So we're just really still controlled, and we're still under the same system that was the Soviet Union at one time, in my opinion. So I really agreed with what he was saying.
Thanks, Amy. Now we'll go into the video, but thank you very much for your comment on that one.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
The real power lies outside of both the puppet Scottish Parliament and the puppet UK Parliament. We need to somehow cut the strings instead of just picking new puppets. Anyway, on with the show. Here's a recap on Soviet subversion techniques. I was listening to a talk by Brian Gerrish the other day, and he was talking about Soviet subversion techniques, how in the Soviet Union they were trying to demoralize the population so that they would become subservient to the state. And this guy Yuri Bezmenov has done lectures and produced pamphlets on the techniques. I think he's a former KGB guy, and he explains how it goes through demoralization, destabilization, crisis and normalization. So Brian Gerrish has this slide up on his screen, and what he's saying is he's reading this Soviet subversion manual and he's saying, hang on, this is Britain today. And he went through each one, and I'm thinking, hey, there's a lot in this. So I'm just going to point out some of these Soviet subversion techniques. The first 15 to 20 years is demoralization, where they're trying to demoralize the public to make them subservient to the state. Now I think in the Soviet Union they were depriving people of material wealth in order to demoralize them. I think it's a little bit different here, because I think as I said, they deprive people of material wealth. Here, they're making people worship material wealth, lock them into consumerist materialism, and then perhaps push up levels of debt and get people demoralized that way. But let's have a look at some of these techniques. In the area of ideas, education, create permissiveness, which is a lack of rules, which means you get people coming out of education who are ignorant. They don't know what's going on. In the media, monopolize. I think we can all agree that our mainstream media is monopolized. Manipulate, discredit, focus on non-issues, and you create an uninformed myopia. Myopia meaning you're not aware of the big picture. You can't really see what's going on. In culture, create false heroes and role models. Premier League footballers, pop idol. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Structure. In law and order, focus on legislative, not moral, and create a mistrust in justice. I think a lot of people in this audience would agree there's a mistrust in justice. Now this next one, damage social relations to create less individual responsibility. I've noticed recently on mainstream documentaries and in news reports, they seem to be focusing again and again on exposure of bad behaviour. So in old people's homes they're saying, oh, they're being abused. Or the BBC website the other day, on their main website, the main news website, there was a video clip. You click on it and it's a guy kicking a wheelie bin down the street coming home from the pub. Why do we need to see that bad behaviour? And I think there's an element of monkey see, monkey do with this constant putting out of bad behaviour. There was a BBC News 24 item the other day, woman standing outside the court, and the newscaster kept going back and forwards to her while she read out these three people's crimes who supposedly had been mistreating people in an old people's home. And again and again and again she said, oh, this woman tipped an old lady out of the wheelchair. She tipped her out of the wheelchair. And they hadn't passed sentence on these three. The point I'm making is that they were driving home repeatedly bad behaviour. And I think that, as I say, there's an element of monkey see, monkey do. And I'll give you an example. In schools they run anti-bullying campaigns. Okay? The first thing they do on an anti-bullying campaign is they teach the children how to spot signs of bullying. So what you're doing when you do that, you're actually teaching the child how to bully. Now I'm not saying all kids will then go and bully, but a lot of them will, or some of them will. A small percentage will. So by presenting bad behaviour all the time in our media, I think psychologically there's a small percentage of people will take on that bad behaviour. Just consider that when you're watching some of the crap that's on mainstream TV. Now in life, this Soviet subversion manual is saying break up the family and break up society so that they create no loyalty, and that the loyalty is to the state. So let's just look at society first, and let's consider that you are a brick in this wall. All these bricks are people in society. We've got a wall which is functioning. This is what they were trying to do in Soviet Russia. They were trying to fracture society so that you become dependent on the state. Now, how are you going to fracture society? Well, I think one idea would be to identify groups within society that can be separated from the rest of society and make them war with each other. Make society hate particular groups, create fractures in that wall, and then knock out groups of people in that wall. So let's just think of a group that we're going to alienate from society in order to fracture it, demoralise society, to make them dependent on corporations and the state. How are we going to do it? Let's choose a group at random. Benefit claimants, perhaps. Okay? So all the green bricks in this wall are benefit claimants. How are we going to demonise them and fracture them from the rest of us? Well, this is how they're doing it.
Julie and Vinny Bienvenue are also experts on life on the dole.
I need a beer.
No.
I really need a beer. Yeah. I need a beer.
These newlyweds are part of Britain's record number of long-term unemployed. No work for more than 6 years. And their only hard graft is working the system.
People find it easier to live off the government because they get most of the things paid for them. And yeah, it is easy doing that. And then you got people that don't want to work and can't be asked, and they find it easy to claim benefit, and I don't know how they justify that. I'm in that position, yeah. I'll hold my hands up, yeah.
At the end of the day, you'd be better off going for the VIP one because it's included.
Julie and Vinny want more. Julie gets sickness benefit, 310 quid a fortnight. All of Vinny and Julie's 9 children are living on benefits. They're the next welfare generation. Julie has to ring up the dole office to check just how much cash they've got coming in.
But can you possibly tell me how much will be going into my bank, please?
And with unexpected cash in the bank, it's time to spend.
Hopefully I can get me money out.
But they spend more on fags and their TV package than they do on food and other basics. Housing benefit is one of the largest chunks of Britain's welfare bill.
Cheeky twat.
Vinny has secured the new home they wanted in the space of just a few days.
Fucking lift up.
I'll have a coffee.
Julie hasn't had a job for 6 years. But the future's bright for Julie and Vinny in Liverpool. It's an arrangement that somehow gets them more benefits. And the cable TV man is back. So, spirits are high. Short of getting a job, life couldn't be rosier.
Right, now there's been series after series of these type of programmes, and it's been covered in mainstream newspapers as well, demonising people on benefits. Now, if you don't think there's absolute manipulation going on in that programme, just have a look at this. This is the poster that Channel 5 used to try and recruit people for this series of documentaries. It says, Channel 5, what is life really like on benefits? Channel 5 is making a new documentary series looking at what life is really like when you are on benefits. Do you struggle to survive? Are there no jobs in your hometown? Do you think the system is generous enough? doesn't say, are you on benefits and proud, which was the title of the programme. If they'd put that on this advert, no one would have taken part. Because I don't believe anyone is on benefits and proud. Alright? Absolute manipulation. That couple and all the other people who are taking part in these documentaries are being duped to take part. This is Soviet subversion techniques. And it's not just benefits. They've singled off other groups as well. Take your pick, immigrants or ethnic minorities, what have you. Now, I mentioned family as well because it says break up in families to create loyalty to the state. Well, if we represent families by these coloured bricks, we've got a father and a mother and children. If you're going to get your chisel into that wall and fracture society, fracture families, there's two ways you can do it. You can do it that way, make relationships fail. I don't think anyone in this audience would disagree that there are more divorces and relationship breakups than ever. And the question I would ask, is that by accident or is it by design? Ask yourself that question. I'm going to list some factors which I think maybe not cause this, but influence it. Influence the breakup of relationships, fracture society, keep us all chasing our tails. How about the benefit system? If you've got someone who's on benefits who meets someone with a job who isn't on benefits and they want to live together, they will take benefits away from the person who was on benefits. So in other words, it's rewarding people for living apart. The influence of television, in particular soap operas, like having an open sewer in your living room. Media personality worship, making people desire the lifestyle of a celebrity, thus putting pressure on their relationship. Materialism, making people worship money, thus putting pressure on a relationship. Habitual use of social media. Now this is a controversial one. I happen to think that going on Facebook is a bit like going into a nightclub. Now the question is, has it been designed deliberately like that, or has Facebook, what Facebook has become, is it just an accident, or is there some kind of social engineering manipulation behind Facebook? And here's a cartoon which illustrates my point. The woman is saying to her husband, who's on his phone on Facebook, and she's saying, do you mind if I strap your phone to my forehead so I can pretend you're looking at me when I talk? And, you know, who knows if someone who's had a relationship breakup because of something that's happened on Facebook. The promotion of hedonism. This idea, which is promoted by a lot of mainstream TV programs, that the only reason why you were put on this planet is so that you can pursue pleasure. And manufactured music. If you don't think the shit young people listen to affects their relationship, you need to do some research. Okay, now there's another way you can fracture families, obviously, and this is from an engineer's point of view. I'm just looking at it as logically as I can. You can do it that way. Take children off their natural parents. And this is not really an area that I've covered on the TV show. Other people have covered it. The UK column has exposed a lot of dodgy practices in taking children off natural parents. But as I say, it's not one of my areas of expertise, but I'm just going to list some factors which might be influencing what's going on here. Social services. Now, there are a lot of very good social workers, but I was speaking to one the other day and they told me that the culture within social work is vastly different to what it was 30 years ago. That there's a culture of almost walking on eggshells, trying to spot signs of abuse and act on it very quickly in case to prevent things such as baby P, which is blown up in the media. Targets. Someone told me that they actually have fostering targets. I don't know if that's true. Corrupt psychiatrists and psychologists, because these are the supposed experts who will produce reports that get children removed from their natural parents. And the family courts, which are run in complete secret. So how can you have independent scrutiny and know what's going on in a court is fair if it's being done in secret? And a culture of political correctness, but feel free to add your own. Okay, so what happens if you are successful in these subversion techniques? What happens to the wall of society? Well, it ends up like that, and it ends up so it can't function as a wall. A society can't function and cannot oppose an oppressive regime. I think we've got an oppressive regime in this country, but I don't think it's being orchestrated by MPs. I think they are a Punch and Judy show for the consumption of the masses, and the real power lies beyond them in the civil service, in the intelligence agencies, in the monarchy, and I think that there are moves to do this, to make sure that society cannot oppose the decisions that are going on behind the scenes. Okay, let's look at our map again, and I mentioned North Africa because it appears that some of these countries down here are maybe next on the list for regime change. And the map at the bottom there, the green represents countries which are predominantly Muslim countries. We can see that all of the countries that have had regime change are Muslim. And I just want to point one thing out about Muslim countries, and that is, if you've ever been to one, you'll realise that their laws very much reflect their religious laws, and they go to mosques very regularly, and they pay very close attention to their religious laws. Right? Now, I'm not saying whether that is right or wrong, I'm just saying that they do. Right? They're very, very conscientious about following their religious law, and I think that that means that Muslim countries, the subversion techniques that I've just explained probably would not be effective in those types of countries. They would just reject the kind of things that we are getting sucked into the West. Right? So a lot of people say that the reason why these regions have been targeted is because of oil and natural resources. I think that's probably true, but I think there's also an ideological battle going on here, so that once this area is changed, it can then be subverted.